It's good to be here. I have just three observations, and somebody who started working on these issues with Bill Clinton in 1993 on the effort to pass NAFTA. I've sort of spent most of my time in D.C. as a lonely Democrat defending globalization and free trade. And I think that just my first observation is that I don't think we can view what just happened, and also with what happened with Brexit and what's happening in Europe right now. I think we're in a period of discontinuity and not continuity. I don't know that the liberal order that we've all built, that started with the end of World War II and that was accelerated with the collapse of communism in the late 1980s. Many of us in this room have been working to sort of stitch together this global order since 1989. It's a little bit unclear to me that it's going to survive in exactly the same way that it has been for all of us over the last generation. I think that my first observation is that those of us who are part of this effort have to recognize that we are going to, the system that's been built is being openly questioned. I mean, if you look at the final ad that Donald Trump ran in the campaign, he directly attacked the system, the global system itself, right? And it was the closing argument of the campaign. And so it brings me to my second point, which is that I don't think that any longer, trade, the trade community here in town has been sort of this happy little community, right? It's been very bipartisan. It hasn't really been ripped apart by some of the partisan rancor of this town over the last generation. USTR is kind of this isolated island of super smart people with very few political appointees. Many of you here are veterans of USTR. I don't know that that's going to work anymore. And I think that part of what we have to recognize is that if the closing out of the campaign by the person who won the election was about the work that we do and casting it in a very negative light, right? That trade itself is going to become part of the domestic political agenda, which it really hasn't been to a great degree. I mean, you saw the numbers on this. It's sort of on the periphery of the conversation. It's not going to be in the periphery of the conversation. And like immigration, which is in some ways to me always the flip side of the globalization conversation, this is going to become deeply politicized now. And this community is going to have to, I think WIDA can play an important role in this, is connecting this community to the broader economic arguments that are being made, to the broader political arguments that are being made, and to understand the connection between the stuff we traditionally talk about in these closed, quiet rooms with suits, right, to the broader issues that are out there. And certainly, we all should get Ken, one of the things you should do is we all should get t-shirts that say proud globalist, right? I mean, we need to defend the concept of that can be a hashtag, right, proud globalist going forward. The third thing I want to say, and this is speaking as a Democrat, is that I think that one of the tragedies of this election, and I'm not going to get into what happened in the election. I mean, obviously, Republicans had a good day, but this was not a wholesale rejection of the Democratic Party. Democrats won more votes in the election. We actually picked up seats in the House and Senate. The Democratic Party, if you look at the net favorability ratings and the consult and other places, we had substantial advantages in net favorability. We had lead in party ID, right? This was not a rejection of the Democratic Party or Democratic values. This was not a change election. If this was a change election and a Republican wave, then we would have lost seats in the House and Senate. It didn't happen. And I think it's very important for people to realize that we lost, the Democrats are about to lose Michigan by 12,000 votes, Wisconsin by 27,000 votes. And what we're learning is that the Clinton campaign essentially didn't contest those two states, right? There was a massive abrogation of responsibility by the leadership of the Clinton campaign to adequately compete in what were obviously going to be two battleground states. If the Clinton campaign had run even mediocre efforts, we would have won both of those states by substantial margins. And so, and I can go through all the data on that, and I've been writing about it on our website, you can go there too. So I also think it's important to not overstate what happened in this election and to mischaracterize the actual will of the people. Democrats have now won, the Republican Party has won one national election in the last 28 years, in 1984, right? Midterms are not national elections. There are more Democrats in the country than Republicans. The Democratic Party is more liked than the Republican Party. And so we have this odd situation where the Democrats have more supporters, have been winning more votes at the national level, but the Republicans obviously have much more power. And that, I think, is going to, I hope, create a break against the Republicans believing that they have a mandate or that the public is significantly behind them on the things they're about to do. They aren't, right? And I also think consequentially, connected to that is this sort of sweeping generalization that there was this massive rejection of globalization or our global economic policies is also false, right? In the exit polls, as we saw, it's a jump ball. It's essentially a jump ball, right? People are divided, they're unsure, they basically feel that it's been a net negative for them, right? But they're not really sure. They know there's things that are good about all this, right? They know that soccer balls cost $12 and they used to cost $20, and they know t-shirts cost $5, right? People know that there are enormous benefits to all this. They just wish it wasn't going to make them so insecure in their own work, right? In the exit polls, let's look at the exit polls, right? 38% people in the exit polls said that trade would create jobs. 42% said it would destroy, take away jobs. Very similar to the data we saw from when it comes. That's a jump ball, right? That's a jump ball. That's not a massive repudiation of globalization or trade, and I think we have to be careful about this. My final point is that the other thing that I think was tragic in this election for us, for all of us, is that it isn't true that America's worse off today than it was, right? And I'm just going to go through some statistics on this, right? And I think that this was, an incredible lie of the Republican Party that was promulgated by the Republicans over the last few years that's going to cost us on our work, right? Because the truth is, on incomes, right, we saw, people are, net incomes are actually up from when Obama came into office. The unemployment rate is under 5%, which for the economists in the room is getting close to full employment. The deficit is actually half of what it was when he came into office. On crime, right, we're at the lowest historic recorded levels of crime in the history of the modern history of the United States. The number of Americans killed by terrorists were the lowest, far lower than we were a decade ago. Police shootings were far lower than we were a decade or 20 years ago, and the lowest ever recorded in the history of the United States, right? And even on economic matters, right, we had the largest income gains, workers had the largest income gains in American history, recorded American history in 2015. And by 2016, Americans will be making more money and median income than they've had any time in American history. We've had 4 years of income growth, right? And so on the question in the exit polls of are you better off today, right? Only 27% said they were worse off than they were. 27% in the exit polls said they were worse off than they were 4 years ago. In Bloomberg's poll, when they asked this question 2 weeks ago, 49% said they were better off, 28% said they were worse off. And so this notion that this age of globalization has brought wreckage and carnage to the United States and has left us well off is just fundamentally not true. And even if you look at the economic data in this election, right, CNN's poll in October, is the economy good, 54%. Gallup, on their question of whether things are getting better for American workers, 62%. What happened is that yes, there are parts of the country, right, and particularly Republicans, who I think were motivated not just on economic issues, but also xenophobia and concerns about the demographic change that are going on in the country. We cannot exaggerate, I think, and blame globalization and trade. You saw it in the Republican data, right? 37% want to rip up trade agreements, right? This is not something that is driving and motivating the broad electorate. It is driving and motivating portions of the demography of the country. And I think what's really important for all of us, right, is the largest generation in American history, and I'm going to make a prediction that the Democrats stay net positive on trade, even over the next few years. And the reason why is that Democrats are younger and they've grown up in this age, right? They expect the kind of openness. This is very similar to what happened with Brexit, right? There's an enormous similarity where younger Americans are much more tolerant of racial diversity, they're much more globally connected, right? The most pro-trade demographic in the country are millennials, right, are young people. And that's why we have to be optimistic, I think, about us working together to preserve all that we've built, because certainly we are facing the greatest challenge, I think, to the liberal international order that we've had in our lifetimes, and certainly since the end of World War II. I want to close just with the end of the lead editorial in The Economist from Friday after this election, and it was the lead story was on Trump. Some of you may have read this. The Economist obviously has been, for many of us, a great touchstone for our adult lives, right? So this is the way they closed their lead editorial. The election of Mr. Trump is a rebuff to all liberals, including this newspaper. The open markets and classically liberal democracy that we defend, and which we seem to have affirmed in 1989, has been rejected by the electorate, first in Britain and now in America. France, Italy, and other European countries may well follow. It is clear that popular support for the Western order depended more on rapid growth and the galvanizing effect of the Soviet threat than on intellectual conviction. Recently, Western democracies have done too little to spread the benefits of prosperity. Politicians and pundits took the acquiescence of the disillusion for granted. As Mr. Trump prepares to enter the White House, the long, hard job of winning the argument for liberal internationalism begins anew. And I think, to me, there's going to be no organization more important than that, than WIDA. And so I look forward to working with you on that.